Hello, dreamers. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Today, rather. Noontide, even. I'm just going to pump a post to the other social media sites. And we'll be all good to go. Ooh, alt texting images taking 1 second. All right. Hello, dreamers, and welcome to the tabletop live stream for SAGAS, the system and genre agnostic system, I believe. I hope I'm not screwing up the acronym here at the outset. But let us tomato ourselves as we begin in earnest with our read-through. Thank you, Parker. It's so hot here. I have a swimsuit on and a shirt, and I'm just like, I'm gonna do some RPGs. So, we are arrested at once by the cover of SAGAS. We have dice iconography, a nice weathered metal look that, correct me if I'm wrong here, transitions almost into like a, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but this one, like the patches that go sideways feel like a transition towards brick. And fading over it, we have these different facets of their heads poking through different sides of the dice. We've got someone who at first, I believe with like the fire in the hand I took for a wizard, but they could be some sort of cyborg as well, because they got the cyber arm and the gun. We've got the lizard cowboy, And we got her back here with the fire axe and the woad tattoos. We are arrested once by this image. It's fairly evocative. We have credit here in no... I don't believe to see roles, but Dennis Fleming, Ariadne Winter, Malcolm Graves, Renee Beauregard. A game by Okayest RPG Publishing. Very nice. I think that even without knowing what SAGAS stands for, we're getting an idea this is a role-playing game of eclectic variety. We have a lot conveyed in a little. Ooh, we have the credits. And we have some nice art here. I like the pugilist in the hair. Gives like Warframe X Megaloboxing X what's that Nintendo game vibes. Credits. Creator, producer, game designer, layout designer, writer, editor, marketing, Dennis Fleming, Okayest DM. Game design consultant, Renee Beauregard, Ariadne Winter, Malcolm Graves. Cover interior art, Book 0. By the way, before we get too deep into this, it's worth noting two things. One, the author, Okayest DM, is in the chat with us, and also, you can find, not only does Okayest DM have a YouTube channel, which you can visit, but you can find SAGAS right now, I believe the version that I am reading, on DTRPG. Okayest DM. I think you should be free to link it, but Okayest DM, you could DM it to me on Discord or link it yourself, but I'm actually not successfully pulling up SAGAS. No, there it is. SAGAS with just Okayest, but not SAGAS with Okayest DM. Here you have it, folks. It's a beta playtest. That's what we'll be looking through. As I've said before, to be on Indie Tabletop RPG Carousel, the game just needs to be in some sort of solidified game state that I can dig my teeth into. We understand as part of our read-through that this is a beta playtest. We will still be taking it as it is and on its own grounds, as is always the case with Indie Tabletop RPG Carousel. However, with this in particular, we will keep in mind that this is not necessarily what the author considers a finished state. So we'll keep that in mind in the event that anything looks like we might see an abrogation of a portion. I haven't read through, so I don't know yet. But if it's like this will probably work like this at some point, or there's a bit of a sketchy portion, we will probably just skip over that because we understand that that is a work in progress scaffolding. However, I'm gonna put my bottom dollar on the fact that this is a functional beta playtest because there is a lot of promotion behind it, and it is on DriveThruRPG for free. So check it out. Any reproduction of a material contained herein is prohibited without the express consent of Dennis Fleming, aka Okayest DM. Uncovering interior art is by Rook Zero. Shout out to Rook Zero. I hadn't heard the artist before, but they got some pretty good stuff going on. So, we immediately come to a cheat sheet. And that's nice. That's nice. I imagine that this is something that you want to see a lot in a product, is one way of putting it. But in a game, it's nice to have a portion that just lays it all out for you. Often these things will be standalone. I wouldn't be surprised if this one is a very available and standalone variant. But also, you'll know that we have not yet reached a table of contents. The inside page is telling us, alright, here's the quick and dirty overview of everything we think you need to reference. And that communicates a lot. So, in a sense, we could read this as the table of contents. We're not going to, but let's get into it. Making a check. GM determines difficulty 1 through 8. GM determines which dice to roll and how many. The player determines which dice to roll and how many. Player rolls dice. Use the lowest result. If lower than the difficulty, it is a success. If higher than the difficulty, it is a failure. And the PC receives 1 effort point. So it doesn't initially tell us that this is a roll under. It very spartanly says GM determines difficulty 1 through 8. It doesn't then say 1 is the hardest, but when you get to the third part of this checklist, you're going to see they want to roll low. Hey, Lerb. How's it going? Just realizing there was somewhere I did not tell people I am doing this. You just got home. Well, you've just come home to Sagas, a game capable of playing both your home and exterior locations. Correct me if I'm wrong, because it is genre agnostic. So, we know this is a roll-under game. We know there are different types of dice, and the player will determine which to roll and how many. Determining dice. Which dice? Check your character sheet. Wounds, struggles, traits, talents, powers, equipment. Use the highest die that must be used. Okay. If no dice must be used, use the lower dice that may be used. Okay, we're putting everything in quotes here. If nothing applies, use D10. Attacks without weapons must use a D12 when no attributes apply. The logo does, indeed. That's interesting. So it's a varied die. It doesn't need to be a die pool, but a varied die. Oh, how many? You use one die unless you spend 3 effort, 1 die. We know we get effort for failures, which is a nice recapture system because it means I played the Powered by the Apocalypse game, Monster Hunt. No, what's it called? Monster of the Week, with a player who was constantly failing, and she got XP and she got better all the time, but getting better actually didn't really help her with the fairly flat math of PBTA. I mean, flat, it's on the curve, but there's not a great variance there. You get like A plus 1. So she totally felt dicked over. Here, she could have pooled that effort into additional die. An interesting mechanic. I don't say this to disparage Play by the Apocalypse, Power by the Apocalypse. I say this to bring attention to the fact that early on, we are in the cheat sheet. We are like 2 paragraphs into the cheat sheet, and we have already seen the total loop mechanism for helping people who are getting RNG'd into a bad time, turn that into a resource that they can then have fun with. Can succeed with. Not the same thing necessarily as having fun. Another PC used help out of combat, 1 effort, or a combo in combat, 3 effort, plus 1 die each. We see a lot of things that are distinguishing for combat already. We have a universal, any genre, anything, as far as I'm aware, piloting a spaceship or like, you know, a looping a bamboo pole to get into the hot spring. You know, it's all described by these dice, and then we get an unarmed attack as a D12 unless you've got an attribute for it, which tells me, and with an 8, right? I'm about to be really bad at math. No, okay, yeah. You can basically if it were 6, it would be half. So you can never really have a terrible chance of success. Because, I mean, no, you can. I mean, sorry, the easiest you can put it, 8, will always be 4 from that die size. Ender the Netrunner, thank you for the follow. Hello and welcome. We're doing a little Sagas beta playtest read-through. I'm getting lost as I usually do, even early on. How many? Another PC helps out. PC NPC attacks another PC NPC in stealth, plus 1 die to attack or cover, plus 1 die to avoid. Apply. Die to avoid. I believe we may be contesting successes here. Distances. For small and medium creatures, melee is the same zone. Close is adjacent, or 1 zone away. Mid is 2, long is 3. Large and colossal creatures, melee is the same or adjacent zone. Long range is 5 zones away. We do not bother to break down short to mid-range for a larger colossal creature. I'm going to guess they don't have the same issues with range that other creatures do. Combat turn order. Everyone makes a reaction check. PCs, roll, monster's reaction stat. A static results to give reliable monster encounter results, and increase play speed. Because you're not going and doing this for every Joe Schmo you've put on the board. But the players do get to have a different result, which I find static initiative will eventually grate on players of a certain variety. This is a nice meet in the middle, in my opinion. That's a great question, Lurd. Right now, we are reading the cheat sheet. I'm at the cheat sheet. So this is all I know. Right now, this is 2 of 31. We're going to learn more. But I don't know that yet. I know that there are traits and talents and struggles and powers. The developers in here with us, and they're free to spoil if they like, but I just see you look for something that applies, and you pick the die size if you either must use it or may use it. So if you have, like, Afraid of Heights, and you forced to roll a d12 on not freaking out about heights, I guess that's just it. There's no additional statistic. There's no add your wibbly wobbly score. There's check your sheet. Do you have something that applies here? If the answer is just no overall, you roll a d10. Other people's actions, spending the effort resource generated by failure, seems to be it. I mean, I hate to guess, but I think this could be a statless system. This could be a trait-only system. Which could be very interesting, and an interesting way to resolve some inherent conflicts with making a universal role-playing system. PC turn. Move an action in any order. Action can be move again, attack, combo, or make a check. Okay. So, on the turns, we were expecting moving, attacking, comboing, or making a check. So we presume that the turns in the combat turn order is the only time turn order has been brought up. This is probably just for punking fools. Monster attack. Move and attack in any order. Simple. Difficulty scale. 1. Nearly impossible crits over. Difficulty scale. Extremely difficult. BBEG. 3. Difficulty. Very difficult boss level. 4. Difficult elite. 5. Moderate, normal, easy. 6. Easy, weak enemy. 7. Very easy minions. 8. Trivial, weak minions. And they probably the difficulty probably just stops at 8 because if the difficulty is below 8, you should just let them succeed. Nice to have a scale like this that gives you an idea of it right here. And if you had missed that this is a roll under system in this little block, you'd have learned here. 1 hour, 1 night, 24 hours, GM decides at the beginning of the campaign. Regain all health and effort. Reduce 1 wound severity. Okay, so resting. You could read these 3 options, but I just read this as the GM tells you what it is, and you accept it, punk. There is a time-based rest and reset, presumably for some resources. And you get your health and your effort back. Reduce 1 wound severity, so there are wounds. Well, we already knew that, but we didn't know they had severity. So we are going to build on a rest-based system. Which, again, probably one of the choices you have to make to go as agnostic as they've gone here. Effort. All PCs have a maximum of 3 effort points, regardless of their level. Spending effort. You can spend 3 effort to gain 1 die on any check you make. Out of combat, spend 1 effort to help and add 1 dice to the PC's check. In combat, spend 3 in the combo action to add 1 die and 1 damage to the PC's attack or check. Regain effort. You regain 1 effort on a fail check. You refill your effort pool to 3 when you reset. You can barely hear me? Is anybody else having that problem? Testing, testing, testing. I'll turn this up. It's putting me into the red on my mic. Is Twitch turned down? Okay. I didn't want to blow anybody's eardrums out. Oh, I had to turn it up, but I can hear. Well, then I'll keep my mic turned a little bit louder. And hopefully that will ameliorate our issues. Regaining effort. Oh, also, I have my little matcha and my little Bovide. So, important note, you refill your effort to 3. I presume that means you do not refill your effort by 3. Meaning the rest cycle with effort has a booze or lose it effect, where you want to spend your effort before your rest so you'll gain something from the rest, effort-wise. So before we even do what is Sagas, what is all this, now here's a cheat sheet. If you just want to peer inside, this is a great preview of the mechanics. We already know a lot, we're already thinking a lot, we already have a lot of questions. This is a good tease, this is also just a useful utility. You can copy this page. For, I'm guessing, layout considerations, the credits are also here. This is probably a sign of serious compacting, and it shows that layout is... We have layout objectives here, right? This is a third, more than a third of a column, and it's some sick-ass art. This is a... We're going to discover these terrible portion. 4th? 5th? Call it 4th. With the space, I call it 4th. Of this page is the credits, which... we have a lot of half-page credits here on the show. We got them pretty efficiently, and they went ahead and slapped names on the cover. Our full team of 4 here, getting credit. We love to see it. I say full team. We do not see Zero, but Zero's credit here. And we even have a little legal disclaimer. You can't reproduce this without his consent. And we have the mechanics that are basically going to sell you or not on this. So if you do not like roll-under systems, you do not like variable dice systems, if you really like those things, you're going to know or not pretty fucking fast. This is a good idea for a lot of reasons. We are not wasting our time pursuing people who are not fundamentally interested. By the time you've picked up Sagas, you are fundamentally interested in a system agnostic game. A setting agnostic game. A genre agnostic game. The point of this isn't to talk bad about any games or preferences, but the primary competition in this space, the 800-pound gorilla in this room, is a game called GURPS. Much is to be said about GURPS. Much could be said about GURPS. I will say this. It is a very particular system. And there's a lot going on. Now, I'm not saying there's not a lot going on here, but in terms of the mechanical bandwidth implied by this cheat sheet, this cheat sheet coexists with art and credits and gets the job done. It has some extra words to explain extra mechanics. I'm sure there is a one-page GURPS cheat sheet. I'm sure it exists. Like, it probably feels like reading the Necronomicon, right? So, you've drawn in people, and you've let them know, this is where we're at. This is our universe. This is our mechanical zone. We're going to universalize as much as possible. It's very possible you could buy a Saga Splat. You could make a Saga Splat that was good and people would enjoy. But I don't get the sense that I would need a specific splat with this system, genre agnostic system. I get the feeling I sit down with Sagas and I play whatever, and I know, okay, SDM has done at least Fallout and some other settings using this and just display its strengths. And it's a very strong system from what I've seen and from what I've read just here. But let's get into it. What is Sagas? Sagas is a tabletop role-playing game. If this is your first TTRPG, welcome. You're in for a treat. You can think of TTRPGs like video games, where the only restriction is imagination. While a video game may have limits, like options in a conversation or borders to a map, anything is possible in a TTRPG. Each player except one creates a character they will control, known as a player character. The other player is called the Game Master. Now, I would note here, even in this section, hate to do another aside, there are those systems which would designate players and the GM separately. This system designates, in this intro that was a tabletop role-playing game, which is a tabletop role-playing game, which is, every book should have a section like this, and I appreciate there's a distinct approach here. Implicitly, we are understanding the Game Master is also a player. I think that's an important message that one can send, and it's being sent. Subtly, but there. Again, many people who already know will probably just completely skip over this to how to play. But it's worth reading. And it's worth reading because the people who need it will read it. And if it wasn't here, this might be where the person who needs it, their run would end. The debate really is, should this be here? Or should this be here? You can go back and forth on it a lot. I would say SAGAS is making its stance pretty clean. It's not saying what is a tabletop role-playing game either. It's saying SAGAS is a tabletop role-playing game. And it's like, yeah, if this is your first rodeo, here's what's up. And if you've opened a book, and this is the left-hand side, assuming that you had back of page, like you've flipped like a spread section where there's pages. This is the left hand, this is the right hand, so you don't need to turn a further page before you're getting this. The other player is called the Game Master, and they're responsible for everything else. Together, the GM and the players imagine and create a world in real time, whether you're fighting monsters, exploring the way beyond, or creating extraordinary scenarios. Here is an example of what part of a game might look like. Martha, the GM. Inside the skyscraper, you see the empty lobby. You see two doors. One appears to be an elevator, and the other leads to some stairs. David, playing Bothrak. Bothrak runs his metal fingers across through his greasy blonde hair. We can take the elevator, right? Sarah, playing Umbry. Umbry cocks an eyebrow at you. You remember what happened the last time we took an elevator? No, elevators can be hacked. We take the stairs. And she opens up the door to the stairwell. If the rest of you follow, give me a check to climb 50 flights of stairs. Does Umbry's bodybuilder talent apply here? Yes, you can use a smaller die for this. That's fair. I like the wizard. I like the punch person. Oh, you mean these are the fill size? Bear in mind, we are looking at a preview. This is a beta preview, and they've got it filled pretty consistently with art, and that's pretty fucking impressive. And it's also like in actual layout, which at an early stage is also impressive. So sure, I'm not going to critique it on the basis of that, because I will mention it where it comes up and where I like it. But you know, the fact that a game at this stage is already in this state of finish boggles the noggin. Not only how it happens. SAGAS is rules light. The basic rules in these first 10 pages, there's almost no math involved for the player except counting. Their main pages are filled with character attributes which can mix and match to create your ideal hero or villain, and some monsters for the GM to use. SAGAS can be played in any setting. No matter what setting or world you want a story to be set in, SAGAS is the perfect tool to help you tell it. A PC's powers could come from magical abilities, cybernetic enhancements, or even natural mutations. Depends on the world in which your story takes place. If you want to play in a world close to our modern one without wizards or laser guns, you can simply play without using powers or special items. SAGAS can be played in any genre. You can tell your SAGAS story however you want. If you want to tell a survival horror, then GM can use monsters. That would normally be too difficult for the players to defeat. If you want to tell a heroic tale, and the PCs can mow down hordes of wicked monsters and finally defeat a single epic boss at the end. You could play a noir, focus on investigation, or a drama that does away with combat completely. If your favorite genre is sagas, it will help bring it to the day. Bring out the best in the tale. Important note, I'd mentioned setting agnostic systems earlier. Technically speaking, this is a genre with a G agnostic system, and I think that's an important distinction that they're making, that I'm sometimes conflating here. Much like how Arium avoided settings with the concept of the Arium. We're using a different concept here, but not one that we've invented to create a distinct mental space. Genres exist, we know them, we use them, and that in Sagas is encouraging you to use them, to think about them that way. Ah. Lurb. Here is your answer. There are even guidelines for creating your own character attributes, which make it very easy to tie your character into the world and make them part of the epic story. So, you seem to be able to invent them on even the player level. Perhaps like communally with the group or the assent of the DM. The Sagas allows for total character customization. By mixing and matching individual abilities, you can create exactly the character you want every time. This means an unfathomable number of builds to create the coolest. This means an unfathomable number of builds to create the coolest combos you can. There are even guidelines for creating your own character attributes, which makes it very easy to tie your character into the world and make them part of an epic story. How to play. You're going to need this book, 2 more players, suggested 4 to 7. Always find the size decisions interesting. One of these players is the Game Master. So it's 3 to 6 PC pilots is recommended. Character sheets for each PC found at the back of this book. Dice, 12-sided, 10-sided, 8-sided, 6-sided, or a dice app. Oh. There's no D4. I was going to say a D4 would be guaranteed to pass like half the difficulty checks, and maybe that's like the strongest die possible. Not called for. Place to meet could be online. Important note. And interesting that we bring up the physical space and the digital space. Most checklists don't include a place to meet, but it is worth thinking about the context of these events occurring. About 2 to 4 hours to play. Yeah, I would say this is standard. Sorry, I'm getting paranoid about where I put something. Yes. Checks. Gameplay in Sagas revolves around checks. This is how they work. We'll first need the prologue. A player character attempts to do something difficult. Like put on a bracelet with one hand. A player character attempts to do something difficult. Find a key, attack an enemy, lie, etc. The action must be reasonable, i.e. mundane human arms cannot be used to fly. If the task is not difficult, sit down in a chair, and no check is required. The GM sets difficulty from 1 to 8, with 1 being the most difficult and 8 being trivial. The GM can either tell the players what the difficulty is, or keep it secret. Either way, no changes can be made once the check is rolled. Note: monsters may have preset difficulties in their stat blocks like attack and defense, and there are certain scenarios like being behind cover or hidden that can affect monster stats. The player determines which die should be used by looking at their character attributes and seeing which ones apply. I long for the game that demands you play on a mountaintop, right? Before the sun, before the sky and the stars. I mean, you'd be playing a different sort of game. Feeling a little silly. The player determines which dice should be used by looking for the character attributes and seeing which ones apply. Which dice? The size of the die you roll depends on your character's attributes and equipment. Multiple attributes might apply to a single check. If an attribute or equipment states you must use a certain die, that is the die you must be used. If no, we don't account for in the event in which there are 2 musts here, do we? If there are no musts, use the smallest die allowed by our attributes and equipment. If more than one applicable attribute or equipment states you must use it. Oh, okay. Use the largest of those dice. Okay. If no attribute or equipment applies, use a D10 unless a roll is attack made without a melee weapon. In that case, use a D12. How many dice? Normally, you only roll one die. However, you may spend 3 effort, which is your default from resting, to add a die to your roll without using an action. So that's basically a Nova by this game standards. Because that's what you get back for a rest. Another PC can help out of combat only, costs 1 effort, or use the combo action. In combat only, costs 3 effort to add a die to your roll. Imagine this makes sense in a lot of scenarios where someone else gets to roll lower dice for what you have going on in this fight than you do, but you have effort, even if you're, say, unarmed, and so you can tee them up. And get them to roll, say, a d6. The player rolls the dice. If multiple dice are rolled, use the lowest result. If the roll is equal to or lower than the difficulty, the PC succeed. If the lower result is higher than the difficulty, the PC fails and receives 1 effort point. No dice can be added after the roll. They must be added beforehand. That's going to encourage people to spend their resources more often because they're not going to be sitting there seeing if it's succeeded or not before they go in. Willingly failing checks. Notice the PC may want to fail a check. For example, if they can't move out of the way in time, another PC can push them. Normally this requires a contested roll, but if the shoved PC wants to move, they can willingly fail and move to the adjacent zone. Willingly failing checks does not award effort. Yeah, that's an important thing to consider. I was always thinking, but you're saying that I always have to use the smallest dice, or go for the smallest dice always, but what if... Or the largest, but what if I want to use a larger dice, even though it's a disadvantage, because I want to activate a different ability or equipment within the May category? You know? Do something suboptimal. I think that this speaks to what the game would think of that, which is, sure, you can choose to fail. You're just not going to get any effort for it. Jury is out on whether... I feel like you would get effort if you just happen to use a bigger dice, but, you know. As a PC may want to fail a check. Alright, wrong. For GM, setting difficulty. There are some situations that don't have specific rules for them, like shoving a creature out of a zone. In those scenarios, the GM should set up a difficulty, not a roll. Example 1. A nearby propane tank explodes mid-combat. The GM determines the explosion would affect everyone in the zone, including monsters. The GM will set a difficulty for avoiding the explosion, while PCs get to roll an avoid check against the difficulty. Monsters will rely on their defense stat. If the explosion's difficulty is equal to or lower than the monster's defense, then the monster is automatically hurt, and the blast with no rolls needed. Again, monsters are kept flat for quick resolution. Example 2, a PC in a zone that is over capacity and can't... It's in a zone that is over capacity, can't attack. So zones have capital C capacity, and this prevents attacks. That's an interesting thing we're learning from this example. Instead, the PC attempts to shove a giant spider out of the zone. The spider does not have anything to roll against in its stat block, so the GM determines a difficulty based on the scenario, size of the spider, terrain, etc., and the PC rolls a check. Contested checks. Sometimes PCs and/or NPCs can find themselves in direct contest with each other. Like if one is lying to the other or they arm wrestle. In those scenarios, a contested check is needed. Instead of the GM choosing a difficulty, the players each roll a check, please. The player that rolls lower on their check succeeds, and the player that rolls higher fails. If the rolls are the same, both checks are re-rolled. Failing a contested check against a PC does not award any effort. NPCs have character attributes and are built like a PC instead of a monster. The PC fails a contested check against an NPC. The PC is awarded 1 effort. The PC's win dies instead of rerolling. Nice. The default break in attack, defense, and NPCs can say a lot about a game. Either the presumption is that the antagonists would succeed were evenly matched. That would be saying something overall about the game, which we mentioned already, that the way you're supposed to handle a survival horror style scenario is just make it harder. Make that tie unlikely. The checks are the same. We'll d10 for each monster. The one with the lowest number wins the check. And the monster makes a contested check. If the monsters make a contested check and don't have the necessary stats for the check, the GM determines which succeeds based on the scenario. Effort. There is a way to symbolize the short-term energy a PC has. All PCs have an effort pool which can hold up to 3 effort points. NPCs do not have an effort pool. Spending effort on yourself. By spending all 3 effort points, you can add 1 die to your own check before you roll. This does not require all 3. You cannot bank effort beyond 1 in-combat combo or extra die. And now combine this with the fact that you fail without being able to roll extra dice. You have to commit. These factors combined create a game which is pretty highly incentivizing you to just go for it, right? The modus operandi here is you should be rolling those dice. You should be shooting them clackers. You should be trying to push because you have a 3 effort cap that's going to get refilled on a rest, that's going to get refilled by failure. And anytime you would gain it, because it's got this banded roof, you are wasting the resource that you would have regained if you're sitting there with 3 effort and you fuck up a roll. This is definitely a game that is encouraging you to push and to expend the effort. Spending effort on yourself. The last way to spend effort on yourself is to continue fighting after reaching 0 health. See Death, 0 health in the combat chapter for more details. Ooh. There are also certain wounds that can be healed with your own effort. And the giant spider's wound web covered. Oh. So status ailments are rolled under wound. I like it. You can tell there's a bit of a unity to the design here, arcing towards the effort pool. And the decision to expend or retain the effort. Out of combat, you can spend 1 effort point to help another PC or NPC, which adds 1 die to their check. I will say, the only issue I can imagine arising within this system immediately is players seeking to try to do things which do not ultimately matter to them that much, in the distinct hopes that they fail. Because that's how you would farm effort, which is the trouble with regenerating resources that can regenerate in encounters and outside of the rest context. This sounds like a game, generally speaking, where the GM tells you to make the roll. And you decide to try something. Maybe there'll be a GM section where they say don't have them roll things that don't have consequences. I mean, we've kind of already seen that, but that's the immediate danger that springs to mind. Spend efforts on others. Yeah, we've read this about 3 times, and it's worth repeating. Out of combat, you spend 1 effort to help another NPC, which would add 1 die to their check. The best ways to spend effort is through a combo action. By spending 3 effort, you can turn on your turn combat. You get 1 die and 1 damage to an ally's next attack. Actually, This is my first time hearing that combos add 1 damage. No, is it? It doesn't say there. It probably says somewhere intermediary. Alright, so. Let's start. Character creation. Player characters in Sagas don't have classes or species with a set leveling structure and predetermined abilities. You can mix and match your character's attributes in almost any combination, allowing for some extremely unique and powerful builds. The process is for creating both PCs and NPCs. Players can play PCs and the GM plays NPCs. The only other difference is that NPCs cannot use effort. Vincent Shadowfriend redeemed a Water the Lee. Thank you, Vincent. It's pretty hot out here. Good water. You can water the Lee, you can stretch the Lee, you can do many things with the Lee with the channel points. Build guide. So, PCs and NPCs are like inherently the same entity by virtue of how they exist, and a monster is a different category. I think this format works. Additionally, like, what is a monster? Are you superheroes and like normal people are monsters and other supers are NPCs? You know? Are humans monsters and you're some other species? Who knows? Build guide. You only need a few things to create your level 1 character. 3 maximum health. 3 maximum effort. 2 traits. 2 struggles. Optional. You may start with 3 traits instead of 2. If you do, you must also start with 3 struggles. Ooh. 3 talents, all at rank 1. If the GM allows it, and all these talents may be powers instead. 2 pieces of equipment that the GM allows. Character backstory, optional. Character description. Backstory, listed as optional. Description, not. I definitely think this is a game, particularly with zones and such, with an eye towards simplicity of running, and running in the theater of the mind. Would be my guess based on the description of the zones. It can be difficult inventing a backstory for your character, especially if it's your first time. Here are some helpful questions to get you started. You can use all of these, some of them, or none of them at all. Where did you each get your traits from? How did your struggles affect your upbringing in any way? How did you learn about those talents and or powers? Where did you get that equipment? Yeah, how did your struggles affect your upbringing anyway? Definitely, like one of the 4 bullet points is like, tell me about your troubled youth. You definitely get an eye for the sort of backstory building that you think is useful here. It can be difficult to mention the backstory for your character, especially if it's your first time. Here's some helpful questions to get you started. You can use some of these, all of them, or not all. So, and we've also emphasized that it's optional. This feels like a game that may be geared to people who are not role players necessarily, who have not like been role playing in a tabletop role playing game sense. Just helping them out and getting them to a sort of a baseline. Like, that's cool, gun. Where'd you get it? What's the backstory? Oh, yeah, you have a struggle. Well, how did that affect your life? You know, and ask them semi-relatable questions. You might not want to make a backstory for your character, and that's okay. It can be more fun to discover the story by playing the games that have created beforehand. This is another gamer ideology, where I was imagining this was geared, like the optionalness of it all was geared towards newer players. But in reality, there are also older players who are like, I'm going to roll up my character, and then we're going to see what fucking happens. And that's the story. No need for a backing track, Jack. So I think that's an interesting perspective. Leveling up. When to level up. When the GM allows it, all the players level up at the same time. Normally this would be right after a major plot point, or after 2 to 3 sessions, a session being about 2 to 4 hours of play. But the GM may choose to have the PCs level up more often or less often. I don't think this is what they meant, but it would be interesting if someone read this and interpreted it as saying, like, if we played for 8 hours, then you could interpret that as, like, 2 to 4 sessions. Which, I mean, Yeah. That's not how I'm reading it. But that's in part because I have a lot of preconceived notions. GM may choose to have the PCs level up more often or less often. Very much we're keeping this in the GM's hands. I think that's good. And it also just makes sense here. I imagine it would be an unnecessary difficulty to ascribe certain XP values or similar to various creatures in this game. And if you wanted to, you could just say attribute big boss level, and it just says after defeating this boss, the players will level up because they're a big bad boss. You know, job will get done. How to level up. When the GM allows you to level up, increase your current maximum health by 1. So if you get a mid-combat level up, you'll health. And spend 2 rank points in talents and or powers. To spend a rank point, increase 1 talent or power by 1, or learn a new talent or power at rank 1. Some talents and powers require more than 2 ranks to receive the next benefit. For those, you may need to spend a few ranks without receiving a benefit. So you can get a powerful boost next time you level up. Okay, so you cannot hold on to them. They're not like liquid skill points that can be held between levels to invest bigly in the next go. You have to dump it into the rank. You have to hit the plus the arrow before it'll let you accept. And you're just sitting there with 1 rank and a 2 ranker. Or 2 ranks and a 3 ranker. Huh. Important. Your rank in any one talent or power cannot be higher than your level. Oh. So you can't push down the pyrokinetic tree at a rate of 2 ranks per whatever. I haven't read it yet. There probably is something like pyrokinetic, I'm guessing. Interesting. There's a flatter banding to this game in a lot of ways. Despite the fact that it seems pretty loosey-goosey. I think that only made the balancing harder for them. And I'm going to guess when we get to the bestiary, we're going to see some creative things going on. Combat. Combat begins when a fight breaks out in the story. There are 2 ways to play through a combat scene sagas. Theater of the Mind, where there is no map and the players and GM imagine the scenes play out. Or a battle map using miniatures and model terrain or virtual tabletop software. Again, we reference the realities of different ways people choose to play, which may not be intuitively obvious to people who are new. Model terrain, minis, virtual tabletop software. This might be their first time hearing about a virtual tabletop. They might be like, how are we going to do this? And they try and do it in like a Zoom call or something. These are good things to reference. If you're using a physical battle map, you can estimate distances. A space is 3 to 4 inches across. Should represent approximately 1 zone. This is a very interesting piece of advice I have almost never seen. I would expect them to be like, oh, you know, whatever is a 5 foot, whatever. A space of 3 to 4 inches across should represent approximately 1 zone. Now I'm trying to figure out how you'd, like, do that in Roll20. It's such an interesting piece of advice. This may speak, I would guess, to a legacy of battle map usage in either the playtesting or in the developer's backstory. Okayest DM is here, could probably tell us. Starting combat. When someone attacks, everyone makes a reaction and monsters use their reaction state. This will determine the turn order in combat. If the Kickstarter is successful, a bestiary will definitely be one of the next Sagas products. Oh, I believe you mentioned there's like monsters at the back of the book. Okayest. I didn't mean to say like that there was something there wasn't, but I remember mentioned earlier there's some foes. Starting combat. When someone attacks, everyone makes a reaction roll. Monsters use their reaction state. I'm guessing starting combat here is the switching reaction state. Again, this is, you know, 0.5, 0.2 beta, so there will be the occasional typo. Worth pointing out purely for their benefit, it's not like a reflection on this being a bad section. This will determine the turn order of combat. Once everyone has rolled and has their reaction, combat begins, starting with their lower reaction. Lowest reaction. Then the next lowest, and so on. After the last turn ends, round 1 is complete, and round 2, fight, begins with the lower reaction. I keep saying lower instead of lowest. This repeats until the GM says combat is over. That's a very interesting way to phrase it. It's not saying, oh, you know, when there's no enemies left on the field or when hostilities have ceased. It's saying it's over when the GM says it's over. The bell doesn't dismiss you, the GM does. Maybe you wipe out everyone on the field, but then the floor starts collapsing and stays in turn order. Maybe there's a boss coming. Maybe there's mooks running around. You don't know. You're in the round structure until the GM says otherwise. Optional. You may delay your entire turn, which permanently increases your reaction for that combat. Delaying your turn does not allow you to interrupt other creatures' turns. Does delay mean you don't take one that turn, or does delay mean you act at the bottom of initiative order? Huh. Readying weapons. Once per turn, you may withdraw or stow a piece of equipment from a readied position, like drawing a sword, holstering a gun, or deploying a shield. So we just want to emphasize it's not an action to take out your weapon. Oh, it is one. I wonder if there's like a quick draw talent that increases that. PNPC turns. On that turn, a PC or NPC can take a move action and a combat action in the order. Combat actions can be attack, move, combo, make a check. Movement checks do not require a combat action, only a move action. Attack! The most common attack action. Most combat action is attack. The player rolls an attack check against the monster's defense or the NPC's avoid check. Okay, so NPCs do actually contest you, whereas monsters are flat. I see. That's a good distinction. If the PC is using something other than a weapon to attack and the monster has no applicable attributes, the attack must be a D12. If the attack roll is less than or equal to the monster's defense or the NPC's avoid check, the attack hits and the monster loses 1 health. If the attack is above the monster's defense, the attack misses and the PC gains only 1 effort point. The PC rolls a 1 on any of the dice used for combat. They land a critical hit. The target loses 1 extra health. This usually results in the target losing 2 health total. But some character attributes or combo actions may increase the damage attributes. Oh, so if you have a combo attribute that's like teeing them up, if your friend hits a crit, it's actually 3, you know. Or if they hit the combo at all, it's a 2, and then the crit adds 1 and 3 damage. We're obviously keeping the health low. I mean, PCs start with 3. That's good. I think keeping down the math is an objective here. The only math the player's supposed to have to do is count. There's no reason that we have to have fucking 500 HP. We're getting the job done. And that also probably makes certain things more mathematically reliable and balanced. Role-playing combat is not just rolling the dice and dealing damage. What sets it apart is describing what your attacks look like when it happens. I hit and deal damage is somewhat stale in comparison to I flip my daggers around into a backstab grip as I leap off the pillar. Time seems slow as I fly through the air before plunging my blade into the monster's hide. We have here, you know, a paragraph saying, hey, you know, it's, why don't we describe a little? Emphasizing this is not about purely dice and damage. And in a system where you mostly do 1 damage, it's worth pointing where the appeal is. Move action. A PC or NPC can move to an adjacent zone using their move action. If a PC moves in combat, the movement may require a check. The difficulty of the check depends on the situation and terrain through which they are moving. Flat grass or pavement would not require a check, or rocky slope or wet stairs might have a check of 7 or 8. Pushing through dense ground might be 4 or 5, and waddling through a target might be 1 or 2. If the checker succeeds, the PC NPC can move the adjacent zone. unless the character attributes restrict their movement or allow them further. On a failed check, the PC gets 1 effort and does not move. In the move action, they can use their combat tracker to try again if they so choose. You're constantly reminding people, hey, that's failure is gaining you an effort. And you know, this is a playtest. This is a game that is started off with a cheat sheet. We're probably having some rules redundancy across this book just because we don't want people to miss things. We want people to have good reinforcement of concepts. We want people to hop around the book and successfully learn this. If they skip right to combat, we want them to learn this. As part of the move action, the PC may ready or stow one item from a accessible position. I wonder if, as part of the move action, is related to the readying. So is the move action the same thing as the readying weapons header under starting combat? It would seem to be identical. And is this saying, like, if you cannot move, you cannot do the draw stow for free? Curious and curious. Combo action. By spending all 3 points in taking the combo action, you can pull off an epic team attack with your allies. Pick an ally and describe how to combo with them. Resist the next action. When your ally attacks or makes a check, they may deal add 1 die to their roll. If hit with an attack, the target suffers 1 additional point of damage. If your target ally doesn't attack or can't attack on the next turn, they'll get an extra die on whatever check they make that turn. The bonuses from the combo action only last until the beginning of your next turn. Note: describing combos. When you use your combo action, remember to describe what you do to help your ally deal extra damage. Could be using controlled flame to light their sword on fire, or grappling the monster by the horns to expose their neck. These epic team attacks are some of the coolest parts of SAGAS. We have teamwork and we have role diversification. You can't rank over your level. And one of the major ways to help out are combos. And you can imagine with the different spread of talents, you're going to want to help people who are excelling in the moment. But incorporating that in a combo of how you help, particularly how this is phrased, it's not just a help action, it's a combo. I think it's trading off of different ideas than a generic buff, and anyone can do it. And I think that's neat. I think that fluidity of resources between the players helps combat, and the urgency produced, the urgency that is produced by not being able to choose to roll more dice after you fucked up. The booze it or lose it mentality of having a hard 3 cap, and 3 is what you need, is the only useful unit of effort so far as I can tell. Out of combat, you can use 1. But in combat, which does seem to be a good deal of the rules, or well, that's what we've read so far. The game's told us you can do a drama where there's no combat. It seems like we are building a tension pyramid towards, yes, be comboing. ABC, always be comboing. And I think that's good. I think that it is a game that is encouraging people to play the kinds of stories they want and the kinds of characters they want to an extreme degree. Isn't presuming anything about the setting or kind of character you want to play, or at least not much. And what it's mostly saying is you're here to reinforce your buddies and do cool stuff together with your friends. And I think that starts to speak to the heart of the SAGAS as a game. Held actions. Hold on. Monster turns. I'm skipping. Yeah, we've already done combo action. Monster turns. On their turn, a monster can move and attack. To move, a monster moves a number of zones equal to its move stat. A monster can move across any terrain without making any check, but it cannot swim or fly unless stated in its move stat. I was wondering, these monsters don't have any way to like roll. Like, does that just mean they automatically get to? To attack, the monster targets the creature, object, or area described in the attack it is using. All creatures in the targeted area or the individually targeted creature must make an avoid check against the attack's difficulty. On a success, nothing happens. On a failure, the affected creature loses 1 elf. Oh no. 1 less elf. It applies any applicable wounds at severity 1. If wounds already applied, its severity increases by 1. If the target is a PC, they also receive a 1 effort. As with any failed check. So here we are reiterating that failing the check is always a 1 effort gain. Earlier we referenced that rule. Out the as with any failed check clause. I think this is good. Personally, when I'm writing, I also struggle with do I keep this in or not, just by virtue of word count. But this helps clear up ambiguity, and again, it's another checkpoint where you could remind someone this is how the mechanic works. Or catch someone who's missed it. Optional. Even if increased severity has no additional effect, it can still be applied. This will make wounds take longer to heal. Oh. Big brain. Held actions. All creatures can hold actions waiting for a specific trigger before they take their action. For example, if a bandit only comes out from behind total cover to shoot, and then immediately returns to total cover, a PC can hold their action to attack the bandit the instant the bandit emerges from cover. Yeah, that's a perfect example of how held actions get used and how splitting, moving, and shoot works. Although, move and attack are... It's movement within a zone. It's movement within a zone. This is a system that allows movements within zones freely, I'm pretty sure. We're out to the zone, so... Yeah. Popping in and out of cover. It makes sense. I'm getting lost in the weeds of a game I haven't completely read yet. We're getting to cover. Zones. In Sagas, distance in combat measured by zones. They can be squares, hexes, circles, vague, borderless areas, etc., regardless of their shape. Zones are 15 to 20 feet or 4 to 6 meters across. It has a capacity of 10. And the medium creature size takes up 2 capacity, and a large zone to give colossal creatures from multiple adjacent zones. Huh. The zone is filled above capacity. Neither medium nor small creatures in the zone can attack. Instead, they must use their action to combo, move again, shove a creature out of the zone, etc. Sometimes a zone might have a capacity less than 10. A train car fully stocked with equipment, a thin hallway, supply closet. These spaces might not be able to fit a large creature or 5 medium ones, so their capacity might be 8 to 6 instead of 10. So this is very interesting because we have a game which has a very loose flow, and I was being zones to be like, a zone is any part of a room you can imagine, as big or as small as you want it. But no, we actually have to have zones relate to like sizes of creature and distances of attack. So you need a fairly hard idea of it. We have a listing in both meters and feet. Each zone has a capacity of 10. Small creatures take up 1 capacity, medium creatures take up 2 capacity, large creatures fill almost the entire zone, taking up 7 capacity. Colossal creatures fill multiple adjacent zones, but only take 7 capacity in each. Large and colossal creatures cannot move into a zone containing another large colossal creature. When a zone is filled above capacity, neither medium nor small creature in the zone can attack. Instead, they must use their action to combo, move again, shove a creature out of the zone, etc. We've already read this. Distance. Most attacks are broken into ranges. Melee, same zone. Close, adjacent zone. Mid, 2 zones away. Long, 3 zones away. This is why we had the earlier size disparity for large and colossal, and I was guessing short and medium weren't listed because they didn't care about it. And they don't. Melee is the same zone and adjacent zones. And the long is 5. Although that leaves That leaves zones 2 through 4. Alright, that don't have a range band designated. A medium creature with a large creature in adjacent zones are considered in melee with one another. Two large creatures with one zone between them are not melee with one another. There are some things with unique range specifications like Conjure Storm, which can have a range of 1 mile. Ooh, I see. A ranged attack. Ranged attacks can be made against any creature within attack range. We're not having any surprises yet. For example, a mid-range attack. Its target in melee is considered a melee attack, and talents like dodge melee would apply. Well, dodge range would not. Ah! So if I try and shoot you point blank with a gun, your dodging bullets ability won't work, but your dodging swords ability will. Sneak attack. If a PC or NPC isn't aware of the monster attacking them, the monster attack is lowered by 1. Let's check. Making the attack more likely to hit, but it's hard to avoid. If the monster is not aware of the PC or NPC attacking them, the monster's defense is raised by 1 for this check, making the attack more likely to hit. If PC NPC is not aware of another PC NPC attacking them, the attacker adds 1 die to their attack check. Total cover. A creature has total cover when their full body is behind protection. While behind total cover from an enemy, a creature cannot be ignored. Partial cover. A creature has partial cover when more than half of their body is behind protection. If a PC or NPC attacks a monster behind partial cover, the monster's defense is increased by 1 for this attack. If a monster attacks a PC or NPC from behind partial cover, the monster's attack is increased by 1 for this avoid check. If a PC NPC attacks other PC NPC behind cover, the target adds 1 die to their avoid check. Cover is an interesting subsystem to include because at once it would seem as if though we're talking extensively about ranged combat, which, to be fair, ranged combat's the most common in a lot of games, a lot of settings, a lot of eras. But it is an important factor to consider with how cover works. What if there's a giant spider and you're hiding in like a ruined house? This ruined house is the ruined wall is just like 15 to 20 feet. So like that's a zone. And like the cave floor or whatever that you're against is like also 15 to 20 feet, or it says several of them. Giant spiders out there, you're in there, they're meleeing you, but you have cover. What if you're in a dilapidated office building and there's a mech outside trying to kill you? Cover, even if it's a melee weapon, even if they're beam swording you. Curious and curiouser, I say. Fall damage. The amount of damage you take from falling depends on how far you fall. If you fall 1 zone, no damage is dealt. If you fall 2 zones, 1 damage. If you fall 3 zones, 3 damage. If you fall 4 zones, 5 damage. So 1 zone you don't give a shit. 2 zones you're hurt. 1, 3, 5. It's stepping 2 for every damage level from 1, but because 3 lines up with the number of zones dropped and the damage dealt, definitely if I thought fall damage was going to come up, I would put this on a little handout. It makes sense for a lot of reasons. Falling should grow exponentially deadlier. I've struggled with how to do that and change stars in other games before in a way that is easy to remember. Death, 0 health. A PC with 0 health cannot regain effort. When a PC drops to 0 health, they can either fall unconscious or continue fighting. If they fall unconscious, they cannot take turns in combat. They automatically fail any checks that require movement or thought. If If the PC continues fighting, they must spend 1 effort at the end of each turn if they have 0 health. If a PC with 0 health takes from effort instead... Wait, PC's... If a PC with 0 health takes damage, the health that would normally lose gets from effort instead. The instant a PC has 0 health and 0 effort, they die. Oh, shit. So this game is pushing you to use your effort, but actually, your effort is your death pool. That's crazy. Alright. The PC can regain health as normal at 0 health. They regain consciousness once their health is 1 or higher. PCs cannot regain health if they are dead. All stacks up. Very interesting. We're doing a lot with a little here. The interplay of effort across this game is immense. And the implications profound. Sagas has a difficult task ahead of it. How do you make a game that can display any genre, truly? And a lot of people would start out by just making a system they think is generically good. Quite possibly influenced by their favorite role-playing games. And then plugging shit in. Right? Like, oh, well, for this you'll have this subsystem. For this you'll do that. Effort as this universal thing. Honestly, I'm already thinking the effort displays spellcasting more like it is written about in fiction and displayed in shows than it works in like 90% of tabletop games. Which is that you're there, you're pushing out the spirit bomb, you're firing the ball, you're doing whatever the fuck you're doing, and you feel like this is killing. You're spinning the weave, you're fucking in Wheel of Time, and you're like, if I go much further, this could kill me. Maybe it won't kill me, but it'll leave me so weak I'll die easily. That's the significance of the effort and the effort pool. I mean, that's why a lot of these dice are very likely to succeed. Because having 2 of them or more is a huge advantage. A huge advantage you can gain. I just read the section, but I think exclusively via effort. Or sometimes, like, extraneous factors. Combat isn't everything. In fact, some games of Sagas might go several sessions without it, or have no combat in it at all. The chapter contains rules like rest and help, as well as all suggestions how to run that kind of play. These scenarios will mostly rely on checks. If the NPC wants to lie or sell something, the GM might ask them to make a check to determine the NPC believes them or buys from them. Cool. Resting. Easiest way to restore both health and effort. All effort, all health, and severity of 1 wound. 1 wound of the PC's choice is reduced by 1. Holy shit. If you have 3 wounds at severity 2 to 3, you're taking a lot of naps. I'm guessing... I mean, being tied up in web is a wound. I'm guessing a lot of these wounds have an obvious or implicit way to fix them that isn't taking a rest. Rest is 1 hour of sleep or light activity. This is the ideal restoration for a campaign with a lot of combat, or if the player would rather not have their character die. Health can be fully regenerated multiple times per day, and most wounds will fully heal overnight. The rest is a night's sleep. This is how most games of Sagas should be run. Instead of waking up every morning fully healed with almost dying the day before, only 1 wound would be healed overnight. It may take several days to fully heal from a life-threatening injury. Okay, so the describe that I described, this is deliberate, and the default mode is like, yeah, if you got totally fucked up, you're going to be walking that one off. And to be fair, there are a handful of specific genres wherein a character breaks their arm and is fine the next morning. in almost every setting of a tabletop role-playing game, you can imagine that. But in few genres of story, can you imagine that? A rest is a night's sleep. This is how most games of SAGAS would be run. Instead of waking up every morning real. This is how we order that. Rest is a full day and a night. Student life activity. This is perhaps the most realistic rest length, but it takes for very slow healing. If players can only heal when they remain in one place for a full day or more, they need to be much more careful about how much damage they take. Making rest this long is a very gritty style of play, ideal for a horror game where death is constantly at the door. So we have default, we have the much less fear of dying, we have the worry about that, buddy. Regardless of how much time a rest takes, PCs are required to sleep for at least 6 hours total of each 24-hour period. If a PC gets less than that, they receive the following wound, or its severity is increased by 1. Exhausters. Check you make that are unaffected by character attributes or equipment must use a D12 instead of a D10. Ooh. You get EP. Okay. All checks using 10. All you checks using 12. I hate to say this, but does this... Obviously, you'd run this to the table. But does this imply that sleepy boxing is the strongest form of boxing? Because you default to a D12 with an unarmed attack. But it's severity to exhaustion. Your unarmed melee becomes a D10. So there's that golden moment of haze. But rather than like late night typing good ideas on a keyboard, you're in the ring. Just socking them. Socking them with 2 less dead results on your die. You know what I mean? That's funny. I mean, obviously people wouldn't run it that way. They would still run the exhausted D12, but some player would very much argue that that means that being sleepy makes their punches better, and everyone will get a good laugh out of it. Severity 3, all checks use D12, you get fucked. Severity 4, yeah, you just dead asleep for a whole day. After that, wound is fully removed. I like it. Help. While out of combat, you can attempt to help another PC or NPC with a check. To do so, spend 1 effort and add 1 die to their check. You cannot help with your own check. You can also only help once per another check. If there are multiple PCs can help one another on a single check. Scene and summary. There are 2 types of non-combat play. Scene and summary. The scene the GM describes exactly what is happening as it happens. It gets played out like a scene in a movie. Examples at the beginning of this book is a scene. The other is a kind of a non-combat play is a summary. Instead of describing what happens blow by blow, is summarized with narration. For example, a player will just tell the GM they want to go buy something in the market. You don't need to play the scene and buy a length of rope. If nothing interesting will happen, you just summarize instead of avoid a boring roleplay. This is good advice. This is solid advice for a game that is about those types of story that you want to tell, a genre engine, a genre agnostic engine, which, unlike most games and setting agnostic games, actually has to care quite a bit about genre and considerations of what genre is like. This is good advice. Like, if there's one dusty merchant in a town, in like a Fallout town, it's probably worth interacting with them in a lot of scenarios. If you were living in the modern world and you need to go buy like a lighter, you know, you could have something funny or weird happen, but like, odds are good that's just going to happen. And you're not going to develop a relationship with the bodega clerk. Although you could, depending on the genre, maybe that's what happens. Maybe you develop a literal romantic relationship with the bodega clerk, and that's the genre of romance. But probably not. And it's good to have this advice in here, even if it will seem obvious to people who played a lot, because people who are looking for permission in the text will have it, and people who are not negatively impacted. Making your own. Perhaps the best part about SAGAS is you can fully customize your own character. Create new and balanced traits, struggles, talents, powers, equipments, and even monsters and wounds. Creating a trait. Trait must be a static physical feature of the character, not something that can be improved. Huh. So you can't be strong. Like, you can't be, like, big muscles. Because, like, you can obviously make those even better, or they can get worse. Trait must not allow checks to move. D6. Make a trait. It's too powerful. Instruct people in size and use will react to develop. No such traits exist. Okay. Yeah, so, like, if there's a powerful trait like I am super strong, or not even super necessarily, D8, but, like, fairly. But interesting that this bullet point is, you get a D8. This is, can't go to D6. Which would seem like implicit from this, but it's worth reiterating because, yeah, D6 trait would be really powerful. So this isn't limited use, and if it's pretty OP, you should. The encouragement isn't don't do it. It's think about, you know, society's reaction to the presence of that in the world. Creating struggle. Struggle must prevent a PC from making a check or doing an action, or state must use a D12 for a certain check. All right, I mean, these are pretty simple but hard and fast and quick guidelines. I'm already imagining, you know, scared of heights for a struggle or what have you. Creating a talent of power. Talent of power is something that can be learned and improved. The difference between them is that powers don't commonly exist in our world today or in the past, but talents do. Some powers are too powerful. Nice. Balances out considered limiting the number of times they can be used per rest. Big brain. Talents and powers can have multiple ranks. If they do, higher ranks should improve the existing ability, not add new ones. Talents and powers should not increase or decrease the dice size. Instead, they should state, may use a D8. Or, may use a D6. Yeah, we're not doing that plussing and minusing shit, are we? No. Die size. No ranks under 3 should allow a D8 to be used for an attack. And no rank under 5 should allow a D6 to be used for an attack. No ranks under 3 should allow a D6 to be used. So you should not be able to start the game popping D6s. Which is a little different than how I'd imagined. But, makes sense. Nothing should deal more damage than 1 damage, or add more than 1 damage. Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty tight, flat damage curve around here. Creating equipment. The equipment may assist in a type of check or allow a unique check that wouldn't only be possible, like swimming with heavy water. Equipment is high quality, a lower die can be allowed. If the equipment is poor quality, a higher die can be required. Must be classified as special or mundane. Special equipment is anything that doesn't commonly exist in our world today or in the past. Mundane equipment cannot allow D6s to be used. Okay, so nothing real world or realistic is permitted to hit a D6. So, I mean, there's no D4s, D6 is the pinnacle. So, makes sense. You need to keep that special. If a crowbar can give you a D6 to open doors, why do you need a power fist? And that's a good general guideline. Doesn't commonly exist in our world today or in the past. So it commonly gives some room. Create a monster. If you want sagas to remain math light, turn back now. Creating a monster can be complicated and most definitely requires some math. Oh, interesting. Like, create the character options, a breeze. I'm like, oh, it's easy. But here it's like, alright, we're going to have to do some math. This is also getting to the anatomy of the monsters. Creating monsters. This is the first time we're seeing that. Oh, we have some traits, don't we? Hold on. If you want sagas to remain math light, turn back now. Creating monsters can be complicated and most definitely requires some math. But there's no way to tell how powerful the monster is. This shows us how the book is talking to the reader, because on some level it's assuming they want ease, and they're looking for a game that is light on math. I didn't see that heavily in the advertising, I don't think, but it makes sense. A lot of what keeps people out of trying a new system is the math. So leading with that foot is a strong opener to the dance, in my opinion. This is the minimum monster would have in its stat block. Name, a way to identify your monster. Size is determined by largest dimension. Defense. How hard is it to hit? I would say determined by largest dimension because you could have a really long, like, snake. So if you have a 25-foot snake, you want to be Colossus, right? Defense. How hard is it to hit? 2 to 3 would be... I also like that we list in feet and meters. I mean, it's a little visually cluttering, but it acknowledges the fact that this isn't really, like, that kind of a game, but you might have ideas about things that are tied to meters or feet depending on your background or other games you've played. And that gives a quick Saga backporting. Like, if you're like, I think a super mutant is 10 feet tall... Okay, the super mutant is large. I know that SAGAS was used for Fallout recently, so that just was an immediate example that flows to mind. Defense. How hard is it to hit? A 2 to 3 would be extremely difficult to hit. Most monsters have a defense of 4 to 6. If it's a big, slow, and or not armored, 7 to 8 would be appropriate. Reaction. How ready for violence is this monster? 1 to 3 would be lightning fast. 7 to 8 would be very slow. I guess that means the default is just 4. Lightning fast, very slow, and 4 is just not even much normal. Move. How many zones can it move in a turn? 1 move to an adjacent zone. Different movement speeds like swim or fly should have their own move stat. How many health hits can this monster take before it falls? At least 1 attack. Quite frankly, each attack must have a number associated with it. This is the difficulty to avoid. Nearly all attacks should be 4 to 6. Something with an attack roll of 1 or 2 would hit nearly every time. If the monster is large or colossal, its attacks should be either melee or long range, not close or mid. If appropriate, the attack can be longer than long range. Creating a wound. The wound must be part of a monster's attack. Wound should not affect actions. The wound must. What about like an environmental wound? I guess it's in the context of creating a monster. The point is, it needs to be part of an attack because you have to hit them with it to get the wound. Wound should affect actions or checks the wounded PC is allowed to make. Wounds have levels of severity. Higher levels of severity should worsen the existing effect, not add new ones. Wounds should not increase the die size. Monsters can have multiple attack options, attack multiple times in their turn, or even have traits like PCs, as long as their traits don't have anything to do with making checks. All since you play Sagas a few times before creating your own monster, so you get a feel for how powerful monsters should be. Traits. Gaze upon the works you might gain despair. There's quite a few traits. There's some struggles. There's some talents. There's some powers. There's some equipment. Sledgehammer. Alright, so it's a D8 to break things, but it's a D10 to attack. Alright. A famous weapon. This can be applied to any weapon type. Weapon, great weapons use 2 hands to wield. 1 extra damage and hit. Will be used to attack once per round. Does it attack more than once per round? Maybe with certain traits. While wielding a great weapon, you cannot move more than 1 zone on your turn. Ooh. Smallest gets to be concealed. Shotgun. Medium or closer targets hit with a shotgun blast are forcibly moved to an adjacent zone. Targets in close range, does that mean that you like, spray across multiple, or is it just a knockback? I find it cool that there's a knockback from shotguns. It implies a lot, really. The monsters. And we have 3 pre-gens. Oh, they're from the cover. Shotgun rubber gripping. Pistol healing device. It's a healing device. A shark. Pitting things against real old monsters is fun. Real old animals, I should say, is fun. So the shark is a bit lumbering to get going, but it swims 3. And swims only. Melee attack is bite. There's not like a wound that it imposes. Like, oh, you're bleeding everywhere. I guess because there aren't really generic wounds. There are always creature-specific wounds. So far as I can tell. One other note about attacks that attack a group. You're more likely to get a mixed result because everyone is rolling to dodge this. It's not, it makes one roll and it could flub it. So you're more likely to get at least some people hit by a group attack, making that sort of an enemy more deadly inherently in this system than you would see in, say, a D&D. Now, Ephesian was introduced to a monster into him. Or archery skill. Not in his trains, he can easily pick up an entire squadron of these soldiers. So you can blast, blow, targets are creatures in melee. Alright. Level 11, yeah. Level 36 Hydra? 5 melee attacks, the Hydra is... Yeah. Page Rider Gold. Page Rider Shark. So... You can't really have monsters fight each other because they don't roll themselves, but you could pit things against a shark and see, is your monster tougher than a shark? Ogre is 1 level above a shark. I wonder what determines a monster's level. I actually don't see guidance inside the level. Let's do some traits. Attractive. People love being around you. Could be that you're pretty, funny, or well made. Trying to convince someone to spend more time with you. I mean, use a D8. I like spend time. They're not like convince them of things, right? Generically, it's like spending time with you. I've had to check persuasion. I guess these aren't check types, they're just vague descriptions. Climber, lucky, keen skin. Sense through touch. Ah, heartless. Ice demon, cold-blooded, or robot. Vision that relies on heatless and heartless. Ah, that's interesting. Heatless, heat vision, heat resistance. So, sure-footed, thick skin. 1 extra max HP. Local mimicry, water breathing. Struggles. We all have our struggles in life, too true. Anarchist, you have problems with authority. Checks made to socially interact with authority figures must be a D12. If you fail, you refuse to follow any directions they give. Fun. Arrogant. You always assume that you succeed and cannot make checks determine your chance of failure. Interesting. Planning. Bad driver. Checks you make to drive pilot vehicles must be a D12. Bad nose. Bad. Okay. We have like very like bad taste and bad tongue. How are those different? Oh, bad taste in the sense of fashion. That's funny. That's actually really funny. This is a very interesting spread. Defeatist, you can attempt to repeat. Check you have failed until 1 hour passes. Huh. And normally there's really no gain keeping you from just like sitting around trying. That's interesting. Because other games say like, oh, you can't repeat the check. Here, the only thing I've seen about repeating checks is if you're a defeatist, you have to wait an hour. Handy. Rank 1. Checks you make to repair mundane objects may use a D8. Rank 3, D6. Okay, so frequently you're getting something at rank 3, not rank 2. Change your face structure. Okay, yeah. Martial arts. What common weapon? D8, D6 at 6. Okay. Parry and counter. Which is an example of something you can't give an NPC because it relies on rolling dice. And there's a lot here. A wolf, just common wolf, level 1/2. Attack 6. Reaction 5. Interesting, the reaction is slow for a wolf. And they can also only move like 20 feet? Huh. Well, the zones are approximate. The zombie shambles, as it should. Wound infection. Maximum health is temporarily reduced by 1. 2. 3. 2 is 2. 3 is 4. A gobble. Create illusion, create storm. So I'm looking at like things you can make that aren't violating the rules, right? Because part of me wants to be like, oh, you make them re-roll, but is that in the spirit of Sagas? Should you do that? Should it be a reaction, re-roll, get shit on? Feels like a high stakes, like hard swings, hard hits kind of game. Hit request trouble. Okay. This is a vampire and enemy, so we have vampirism. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V. One extra damage from silver weapons takes 1 damage. She's spent in sunlight or running water. Defense and attacks increased by 1 when in direct sunlight. That makes them worse. All right. Attacks actually kind of implies that you could bite an extra round as a vampire while in sun. Nice. Try not even making vampirism stages. It just says within this time. Okay. Sometimes we adapt things. Like I could say, gunshot wound is a wound, right? And in fact, one moment. So there's a lot of stuff to read here. You guys can read through it on your own. It is freely available, and I like it. I think it's interesting. I think overall the game is... It has a strong identity, and it is not immediately analogous to any of the other things that I have encountered that try and do the same thing. And that is a pretty strong starting point. This is going to come to a crowdfunder at some point, I believe explicitly a Kickstarter. Given that we're at time, but you know, I've got some time. Let's consider this for a moment, right? Here in Sagas, we've got monsters, right? And let's just... How big will you be? I can afford to make you larger. If we just left justify this, so the right, so we want to make something that is large. And we want to give it defense of 4 because it's not that hard to hit, but it's on the higher side. Reaction, very ready for violence. I like that ready for violence is used for reaction. A move. Sharks swim, 3. And wolves run 2. So faster than a regular land animal. Can climb. How many hits can a monster take before it falls? We'll leave that and we'll see. Can I bold with this font in this manner? No, I cannot. Attacks. Wound should affect actions or checks that the wounded NPC is allowed to make. Sacrifice health for power beyond your limit. Blood powers, let's see it. Spend X health and 1 effort to gain X additional ranks to the power you currently have. Okay. This is cool art. You're not fully seen. Alien horror. Health 13. Horde monster type, apply to medium or small. Okay, so you make it really big and have a lot of them. Filling zones, okay. That's neat that they have the horde rules, just as a little rider in their monsters. A bandit chief. A banshee. A bandit chief only has 4 health. A tiny dragon, a medium dragon has 10. We'll put this below medium dragon, we'll put this as a 7. put it 8. It should be a consideration to defeat. Let's say melee attack 4, 1 damage, because I don't think they normally have hits that do additional damage, do they? It attacks twice. I'm going to have it spit attack at long range because it's large. I'm going to have it give a serrated leg melee spit attack 4, serrated leg melee attack 3. So you're gonna struggle to not get hit by this. And let's see, ripped wound. Characters, so ripped wound, S1. How is character move determined again? I forget. Do. Okay. Can limit dice number. Okay. Ripped wound S1. On mobility related checks. S2. All mobility related checks are D12 unless the wounded chooses to suffer 1 damage. S3. All mobility related checks must be, so I should put it. Checks cause 1 damage and use D12. Okay. So I think I have created. There's a better way to do this, but I'm not doing it. I think I have created an enemy. And I think that, yeah, this is a pretty straightforward system. You can get basic whatever you want out of it. And, yeah. I like it. Don't forget that you can find this on DriveThruRPG. Find selection of stuff back here, and you can find Okayest DM across the internet, including on YouTube. So check them out. Just give them a follow. And I will probably drop this in. Of course, it's not working. The bot has taken a nap. I'll drop this in Theory Crafting on our Discord. Feel free to join. But I also feel like gunshot wounds could be done similarly, but I digress. I like the idea of stacking up these wounds, and I look forward to hearing and seeing more about Sagas. For now, however, I would say we've had our look through here on the carousel, and Celtic in a few is live, so why don't we go say hello? Farewell, dreamers. Until next we meet. Don't forget to check out Okayest DM, and have yourself a time. Thank you, Parker. Thanks, Thurb.